All right, we start. Welcome everyone to our inaugural Global Digital Horizons event. My name is Jingfeng Xu. For those who find it difficult, just call me Jing. It's like jingle bell, right? It's easier for you to remember, just Jing. I lead our digital services across Australasia. That includes Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia. It's very exciting to have so many of you come here in person as well as online, understanding that Lepore has close to 200 people dying online as well, so welcome. I would also like to welcome to our guest, Arup Craig, who is our Global Chief Information Officer, joining us in person in this event. Very much appreciate. Here's our back. Feel free to have a conversation with Rob as well later on. This event is about harnessing data for the built environment. I'm very much look forward to the discussions as well as the panel presentation sessions led by our digital advisory lead, Dr. Serryn Eagleson in Victoria. Serryn has more than 20 years of experience, has led many major research digital projects in Australia and beyond. Serryn also has a very particular expertise in Earth observation and the geoinformation system, which is a very important digital infrastructure underpinning the digital twins, urban planning, as well as master plan applications, such as the provision of open space, development capacity, as well as local livability. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Serryn, please. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Jing. And welcome again to all our guests, both here in the room and joining us online. My name is Dr. Serryn Eagleson, and I'm delighted to be your MC for this event, titled Harnessing Data for the Built Environment. In Australia, before we start an event, it's customary that we acknowledge the First Nations peoples of the land on which we meet. For those of us gathered here in the room, we are on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I wish to pay my deepest respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I'd like to extend my respect to all the First Nations people's land that you may be joining us from today. Also, just before we start, we do have photographers taking some photos today, so if you feel uncomfortable with having your photo taken, please do let me know and we can remove those photos. We're hosting this event to showcase how we use digital technologies to shape and efficiently manage our built environment. We are doing this amidst the action on climate change that we need to take. Although we'll focus our event here in Melbourne on the built environment, please be aware of the other events happening around the globe covering other topics, including the acceleration to adoption of technology, promoting climate resilience, and more. As we have a very full and dynamic agenda for you, I would now like to introduce our keynote speaker, Global Digital Services Portfolio Leader, Will Cavendish. Will play on the screen.
Welcome from me to Digital Horizons, a whole day showcasing the opportunities, challenges and debates about the role of digital in our world. I'm delighted to be able to kick things off with a short presentation about what we in Arup have learnt and think about some of these issues. First, we know the built environment challenge is growing and profound. Over the next couple of decades, the world's population will rise to 10 billion, and we need to meet their needs in an equitable fashion. Their needs for habitation, their needs for energy, for water, for transportation. Within that, 2.5 billion more people will be living in cities that we need to plan, design and build. In other parts of the world, most of the buildings that we need have already been built. Another challenge for us to face. And of course, we need to do all of this while we're living within planetary boundaries, particularly the planetary boundaries of carbon and nature plus. So we're going to need to meet the needs of more people in more equitable ways, while at the same time making sure we preserve our planet. Now, the good news is that there are some great new and existing digital technologies that can help us with this task. And in Arup, we think there are 6 really significant ones that are going to be useful for us. The power of artificial intelligence and machine learning, allowing us to explore big data in new ways and provide new insights about the challenges we face. The proliferation of data that's coming from sensors, drones and satellite technology, offering new opportunities and new frontiers for our understanding. The ability to develop and deploy digital twins for both simulation and optimization of operations and asset management. The power of the Internet of Things, 5G networks and cloud computing in providing a modern, scalable technology infrastructure to the built environment. The ability of generative design to use algorithms to design things in different ways and better ways than we've been able to do before. And the onset of robotics and automation as new tools, new solutions, new opportunities for us. These 6 technologies, we believe, are very powerful and offer us great opportunities in our work going forward. And on the back of those, we already know that digital can critically enable the pathway to net zero, to climate resilience, and to nature. For example, the ability to use generative algorithms to design buildings in different ways than we've been able to previously, and optimize a whole range of complex factors to improve outcomes. In some cases, reducing embodied carbon by up to 50% over a more traditional design. Or indeed, using the power of data and analytics and structural modelling to improve significantly the climate resilience of buildings portfolios, with an opportunity cost of perhaps $3 trillion of savings and improvement across our building stock around the world. Or the ability to use Earth observation data to both map and improve biodiversity net gain, so contributing significantly to Nature Plus. So digital enabling net zero, climate resilience and Nature Plus, but also digital enhancing our ability to meet human needs. Our ability again to use satellite data to map cities and districts at a level we've never been able to do previously, to design nature-based solutions that bring the power of green, blue and grey infrastructure to improve the functioning, livability and biodiversity of our cities. Things like smart buildings platforms that allow us to take the enormous power of data inside our buildings to improve human well-being, improve occupancy and also reduce significantly energy, perhaps by up to 30% of traditional buildings. And the ability to use digital twins to map, analyse, understand and take us through the pathway of shifting towards a more decentralised, more resilient, more renewable energy system, absolutely vital to the future of our energy and absolutely vital to the future of the pathway to net zero. So digital tools, techniques, capabilities also enhancing our ability to meet human needs. However, there's always a but. Firstly, when we step back and look at the pace of digitisation in the built environment, the truth is it's only just started. Compared to other sectors that are much more advanced, digitisation is at its early stages, for example, in something like construction. Now, the corollary of that is that we're going to need all to put in a huge effort and huge investment to create the kinds of technology, data and digital infrastructures that are going to be needed and on which many of our digital solutions are going to need to sit. And that's going to be costly over the next 10 to 20 years. Very hard to estimate how much, but tens, if not hundreds, if not more, billions of dollars are going to be required to be invested in the sector in order to create the fundamental platform of digitalization that we need. Secondly, unlike other well-known technology sectors, particularly consumer technology sectors, where whole new companies or whole new technologies seem to come out of come out of the blue and get implemented very quickly. Think of the current debate around something like ChatGPT. In our world, it's different. We live in a world of deep tech, where our solutions need to be rooted in engineering and science, where research takes time, where it takes time to develop the solutions, scale them, prove them, and make them available and usable in the world of buildings, construction, and infrastructure. And not only does it take more time, but it also means that the whole sector needs to work much more closely in partnership. Incumbent firms, startups, governments, regulators, financiers, venture capitalists, and of course consumers and clients, all are going to need to work together to pull through the deep tech solutions that our sector needs. And that's going to take longer, so there's no time to lose. We need to get cracking now. Third, our sector is really rather used to building new things rather than reusing what we've already got. But particularly with the rise of embodied carbon, we're going to need to treasure and preserve and reuse and refurbish what we already have compared to just thinking about greenfield and new build. Again, digital technologies have a great opportunity here. So, for example, in refurbishing and reusing existing buildings, a critical task is to understand their structural state. What's their state of repair? How have they deteriorated or otherwise over the 40 or 50 or 60 years of their design life? Digital tools, structural modelling, new forms of data, new forms of machine learning allow us to understand that in a way we weren't able to do previously. And that allows us to keep and reuse structures and buildings that otherwise we might have just written off. Likewise, when looking at the lifespan of a complex asset like a long-span bridge, we can again use the combination of structural engineering, data insights, and advanced simulations to properly understand how that infrastructure is performing and how it can be repaired and improved to last another 20 and 30 years. And that's an example that we Arup have done on a bridge, for example, in the Netherlands. And even for more recent assets like offshore wind, the same issues. How can we extend the life of what's already there? How can we optimize the maintenance of that asset and the operation of that asset? We can use machine learning, data and digital and insights to provide fresh understanding about how that can be done and how we can prolong the economic life of existing assets. Finally, though, so much change in our world is now being driven by public policy, by commitments that are being made internationally, regionally and nationally towards climate change, towards climate resilience, towards Nature Plus and other areas as well. These are the things that are driving change in our sector, whether it's the EU Green Deal or the American Inflation Reduction Act or the Chinese commitment to peak emissions in 2030 and reduce, or India's commitment to be net zero over the next decades. These are the commitments, the policies that are shaping our sector and providing the dynamic for change in our sector. But that means we're going to need to get better at working with governments, understanding governments, collaborating with public agencies and public policy to achieve the kind of changes we want to see. So the good news is that we have some fantastic digital technologies that we can use and deploy in our sector. The good news is that we know already they're helping us head towards net zero, improve climate resilience, get to Nature Plus, and provide services at scale for the population in the way we need. But there are challenges. We've barely started. We need to take time to develop the kinds of deep tech solutions that are needed. We're going to need to increasingly focus on what we've already got rather than what we need to build. And we as a sector are going to need to get ever better and work ever more closely with decision makers and public policy agencies. But if we do all of that, the opportunity is very significant. And whether it's harnessing data in the built environment, whether accelerating urban innovation, whether it's promoting climate resilience, whether it's moving towards net zero and a nature positive future, or whether it's designing and delivering the future transportation, all the topics for our sessions today, there is an enormous opportunity to harness digital to tackle the world's needs. Thank you, and I hope the day is a wonderful one.
Well, thank you, Will. And I hope from that presentation we're just able to think about the enormous opportunities and the phenomenal amount of change going through the industry at the moment. Next, I would like to move to our showcase presentations. First, we're going to focus on the importance of digital strategy and data information for smart building technology for the flagship Quay Quarter Tower and the surrounding precinct. This project will be introduced by Nicola Hudson, Senior Consultant, Design Management and Strategy at Arup. Nicola will then introduce our main presenter, Daniyal Lepore, Head of Asset Technology for AMP Capital Real Estate. Nicola.
All right, thanks, Serryn. Hello, everyone. Quay is a recently completed precinct in Sydney, just by the Opera House, which you're going to hear more about later, and by Circular Quay, which is sort of Sydney's front door. And it spans 2 city blocks. Sorry, go back one. And it was developed by AMP Capital with this vision to bring neighbourhood life to the heart of the city. And it is really part of a broader shift that's happening away from predominantly commercial use to more diverse uses. And it provides, at the moment, apartments, new laneways, public space, retail, and a sort of centrepiece office tower designed by the Danish architect 3XN. So the tower, Quay Tower, is one of the largest adaptive reuse buildings in the world. It retained about 2/3 of the 1970s original structure, so that saved quite a significant amount of carbon and building costs as well. And very early in the design process for Quay, AMP commissioned Arup to lead a digital work stream, which started way back in 2015 and continues today when the precinct's in operation mode. And during this 8-year journey and across the sort of 5 different phases, we knew that there was going to be significant changes in the way people use technology. And so really a sort of key goal for our work was how can we design a digital infrastructure for the building and a team that could embrace change. So how can we think of the building more like a digital product that can be updated over time? Because as we know, sort of design really starts when people start to inhabit the building. So we started this journey by developing a vision, a digital vision, to start portraying how technologies could support both the experience and the operation of the tower. And we had in mind that, the success of the precinct is ultimately about how people feel when they're there. And by people, I mean, the office workers and visitors coming in and having a welcoming arrival experience, finding a place to work easily, getting help when they need it, through to couriers being able to quickly drop off something at the precinct, through to the asset managers or workplace managers being able to strategically review the performance of different spaces and services. Are they being used? Are they meeting their sustainability targets? There were all these different experiences that we start to think about and define. And we defined it based on a mixture of qualitative and quantitative research, so stories and stats, to start to get a sense of, which experiences do we need to actually design in more detail. And it's important to note here, actually, that the kind of primary audience for our digital vision and experience design was actually our colleagues, the engineers working on the project, and our partners, the architects, to help them sort of inform their work on what people need, but also make sure that it's all aligned and it can create this sort of coherent experience. The other main audience was the operations team, who are the ultimate owners of the experience on a day-to-day basis. So based on the vision and to deliver the vision and the experiences, we started to define this digital infrastructure for the building. And 2 key features here are there was an integrated communications network, which is essentially a sort of fibre backbone that runs throughout the building to connect key building systems. And on top of that, we designed an integrated data platform, which allows data to be securely exchanged across the base building system. So those are just 2 key features. But I will hand over to Daniyal from AMP. He's going to talk more about the technology from the building, from the client side.
Thanks, Nicola, and thank you for having me today. Quay Tower, it's been a privilege to work on. It's been a once-in-a-lifetime project, personally for myself. You got the clicker? Thank you. So I've been involved with Quay Quarter probably the last 3.5 years, really around the detailed design aspect and really just trying to operationalise a lot of the technologies that we've put into the building and just passing that on to our operations and property management function. But certainly as an extension of Nicola's initial vision and the Arup team, Quay Quarter is certainly founded on data-driven intelligence and infrastructure to enhance the user experience, improve the sustainability performance of the building and operational performance over its life cycle. So I think that's a really nice sort of phrase that sort of encapsulates, I guess, the digital vision for this tower and I guess some of the outcomes that we're hoping to achieve. So it's all around the outcomes that we want to achieve. Just circling back on Nicola's some of the use cases that were teased out as part of the vision exercise and the workshops with various stakeholders. There were 5 sort of main digital underpinnings or user outcomes that we wanted to achieve. One was around access, and Quay Quarter is actually quite a complex building. It's got double-decker lifts to accommodate or really try and move people through the tower given the expanded floor plates because of the adaptive and expanded design of the original 50 Bridge Street. It's got a secure line and just managing credential management across tenant systems with base building, with end-of-trip lockers, with the destination control system. So access journeys in general are quite complex, but we're just trying to simplify that. Certainly streamlining concierge and visitor management, that's been a really key focus that was teased out. Intuitive navigation throughout the tower, but more so how that interacts with the wider precinct itself. Data-led insights, I mean, that's taken up a lot of time and I think that's really where the value is starting to be derived. And efficient delivery management, not just for the tower, but the neighbouring 33 Alfred Street as well. Oh, that one. Thank you. So it all starts with the foundational infrastructure. So there are 3 sort of core components that I would like to think compromises the digital technology stack. There's one being the operational technologies which run the day-to-day functions of the building, whether that be the HVAC controls, the access controls, CCTV, the energy management, or even how, I guess, the building responds from a lighting or even a load management perspective. So in Quay Quarter, we've got about 15 to 30 different subsystems operating in the building, which are connected to the integrated communications network, all reliant on open protocol, modern data standards that we can extract data from. So the integrated communications network, that was put in as really the foundational infrastructure to satisfy current use cases and any sort of new use cases that tenants might want to satisfy or base building might want to satisfy in future. So really having that ability to adapt quite quickly into the future has been very, very key for us and our tenant partners. And so that could be certain things around, new sensors and even, just really any of those new operational technologies that get introduced in future. And the third one is arguably the data layer, which is around that integrated building platform that we decided to install. And that's around centralising all the data from these disparate systems and just storing it in the one sort of common location, but more so around contextualising that data for various building personas and end users as well. Cool. So just to circle back on the experience piece, so certainly from a seamless access experience, I won't sort of dwell on that too much, but really providing that intuitive, really simple sort of streamlined straight-to-desk experience for our office workers, visitors that might enter to the building, and certainly for the general public. Visitor management, we're installing a QR code-based visitor management solution, which obviously is being able to be installed based on the digital underpinnings of the building. Very much around indoor environmental quality, that's been front and centre, particularly given the last few years that we've gone through. Deliveries and tenant engagement, so certainly making sure that a lot of the digital services are available to our tenant occupiers just on their fingertips as well. So from an insights and operations perspective, I did touch on the dashboards or the presentation layer of our integrated building platform. So this data insights piece, as I mentioned before, was required a fair bit of workshopping with various stakeholders. That ranged from security personnel to concierge to our operations teams, ESG key stakeholders, and obviously our property and funds management business as well. And they require different data served in different sort of aggregated or rolled up views depending on, I guess, their particular use cases. We've got approximately about 200,000 data points streaming into the platform it's pretty much live based on, I guess, the change of value of that data. But we really needed to make sure that that magnitude of data could be easily digested by, by the users of the platform as well. So in terms of some of the dashboards that we've been able to curate or develop, it's one which has been pretty common across user groups is around daily neighbours' energy and water performance tracking to make sure that base building and tenancies alike are on track in terms of their sustainability goals. Unified critical alarms across such a magnitude of diverse and traditionally siloed systems. That was quite important from our security operations folk. A recent one is around building occupancy, so making sure that we're able to tell tenants how many staff are in the building, and even from a life safety perspective, who's in the building, what floor that they're on. Aggregated subsystem views, which you can see on screen, so just really drawing the user's attention to any sort of critical incidents or issues that might need to be actioned before they traditionally dive into the native subsystems. And indoor environmental quality, just making sure that we keep on top of that as well. All designed to provide the right amount of information quite quickly and digestible to the masses. So in terms of what's on the horizon, I certainly believe that it's putting all that data to work. We've satisfied some of the immediate use cases. I believe that there is a whole bunch of opportunity around using that data to, obviously optimise energy performance, how we maintain and manage the building, and obviously around asset lifecycle management as well, which is, becoming a forefront of a lot of our investors. Decarbonisation, just making strategic decisions around some of the lifecycle upgrades that we need to perform over the lifecycle of the building. And I guess, just really the role of AI applications. I mean, that's such an emerging and fast-paced space, so how we can use the data captured and providing that AI or machine learning overlay to really get to, just really derive data out of what we've got in the building today. So thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Daniyal and Nicola. And I forgot to mention at the start, we're going to hold questions because we're going to have a panel discussion. So please do keep your questions in your thoughts, and we'll give you that opportunity to ask them. Next, we're going to showcase the innovative work that Major Road Projects Victoria, also known as MRPV, are doing to drive and foster innovation. To set the scene, I'd like to profile our first speaker, Dr. Scott Taylor. Scott is the Director of Engineering and Innovation at MRPV. Scott currently leads the engineering team, and in his role he oversees all engineering and technical aspects of the projects within MRPV. Following Scott's presentation, Tim Hunt, lighting leader at Arup, will showcase the nighttime vulnerability tool that has been developed to engage communities and safety alongside the work that MRPV are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. So I was just going to introduce a little bit about Major Roads Projects Victoria and how we build innovation into the projects that we're delivering. And obviously that has a big overlap with the digital technology and digital engineering work. And then Tim's going to have a quick demonstration of some work that we've actually been implementing as well. But I won't take his thunder. So let's see if this clicker is not working. Oh, here we go. Major Roads Projects Victoria is a government authority responsible for delivery of road projects. We sit in part of a larger authority within the Victorian government responsible for all of the transport infrastructure that we're building across road, rails and tunnels. Oh, a bit too far. So we were formed in 2019, as I said, around delivery of major projects, and we very much abide by our vision around building better connections for Victoria. So what is innovation? So innovation, I guess, for us at a very high level is around using new or novel ideas to solve existing problems. And we see it as sort of a sliding scale there where at sort of the lowest level, if you like, we encourage things like continuous improvement, where we're looking at the technology we're using or the processes or ideas and looking at building on them in a continuous improvement manner. And then we move down into that innovation adoption, where we're looking across not only our own industry and other projects, but also across other sectors around what we can adopt within our projects. And then obviously the ultimate goal of any innovation, I suppose, is around establishing new industry applications, new and novel ideas, and implementing them on our projects. So within the transport sector, I guess a lot of the innovation is actually driven by the projects that we deliver. And you can see that there in the diagram as sort of the lowest level of where innovation happens. What we then find is that projects are actually part of organisations, whether they're companies like Arup or within government organisations or partners coming together across alliances or joint ventures. But all those projects sit within those organisations, and what you'll find is that the innovations sometimes filter their way up to the organisation, but maybe don't quite get transferred across, the actual organisation or joint venture. And then the bigger sector, I suppose, there is the industry, and the ultimate aim of innovation is to spread that new idea or new technology across the whole of industry. But the challenge is how that happens from a project level up to the industry level. So at MRPV, we see our role in government as embracing the whole of industry and raising all those innovations up from a project level to be used across the broader industry. So the role that we play in government, I suppose, is we set the regulatory and policy environment that industry operates in. So we have a lot of influence over what innovations are enabled to get up to that industry level. MRPV is also a major purchaser of infrastructure within Victoria, so we've got a vested interest to make sure that innovation is reached to that industry level so that we can benefit from value engineering and savings and lower carbon and what are all those other benefits that can be realised if those innovations reach up to that industry level rather than just remaining at a project level. And so there's a whole lot of initiatives we're doing at MRPV, and I guess we see our role very much around removing and reducing the barriers to innovation rather than actually creating the innovation or creating the new idea. We see our partners in industry doing that work, but what we do is we look to try and remove and reduce those barriers. So some of the things we're doing is trying to modernise our standards and specifications here in Victoria by looking at new and more modern materials and techniques and processes. We've also got a program around increased use of sustainable products and in particular recycled materials in our projects. And we're also looking at improving productivity and efficiency through developing standardised practices. So the first initiative there around the modernising standards and specifications, we've been on the journey for about sort of 3 to 4 years now. around looking at what those new and novel and sort of modern techniques and products and materials are, and updating the standards and specifications to coincide with what those current practices are. In terms of recycled materials, one of our initiatives is a brand called Ecologic, where we are looking at integrating that recycled content into all of our projects, not only in the road sector but also other transport infrastructure. And the aim of the program is to contribute to the circular economy and encourage innovation and use of recycled products in our projects, essentially. And the third initiative there is around standardised designs, and I think there's a real drive to improve productivity and efficiency, and this is a key way that we see that happening. We look at it at 3 different levels, where at the lowest level, at the bottom of the page there, is the processes. So we have standardised processes across industry. It increases the efficiency with the way that we're communicating to partners. The second level there is around industry best practice. So that's around looking at the designs that we're using and making sure that what's used across the industry is the best way of doing it, that there's not duplication of effort. And then the ultimate level around standardised design is ownership of the standardised design by government. So simply a standard design sits at a government level, and suppliers know that they produce or create whatever that standardised design is. So I want to leave a challenge with everyone, and then I'm going to explain how Tim achieved this challenge, I suppose, or Tim can explain how he achieved it. But I really do challenge everyone, and particularly, I suppose, at Arup and in the consulting world, to look for what opportunities you've got to be innovative, make sure you're fostering a culture of innovation, and challenge government, around some of those barriers that you're finding, to design solutions. And make sure you're sharing knowledge. Don't keep it in the project level. Raise it up to your organisation and ultimately to industry, so it is shared across multiple forums. So I'll hand over to Tim, and he can talk about how he achieved the challenge.
No pressure, and thanks for the challenge, because that's I think how we do our best work when we're put under a little bit of pressure. So speaking of pressure, I'm looking at the timer as well, so I'll try and get on with it. We're grateful to be working on this innovation with MRPV. I'm going to talk about the nighttime environment. You may know it as lighting design. I want you to walk away from here thinking about nighttime design. So just to be clear, MRPV are meeting the codes. So this is not, sharing some of this can make clients a bit uncomfortable as well. They're meeting the codes. The outcomes are driven from the codes. But like Scott said, we want to challenge stuff in a safe environment so we can learn and go forward. And why some of the drivers around the work they do is to increase participation in the community connections and enable better outcomes for people. So really good stuff. So what I'm asking is, I guess, how can we use the digital tools to design the nighttime we want? We have 4 sites we've looked at across Melbourne, all undertaking massive infrastructure upgrades at present. But I think this image here is to stoke, I guess, what compliance with nighttime design can look like. So this is compliant. But as we look around the room, and we all have our own different experiences, we can actually feel a lot different in these environments. So as the industry and the standards we're guided by, this is a good outcome. And some people will think this is a good outcome, others won't. Whoops. And this goes about the rest of our city as well, and it's not just Melbourne, it's actually around the world. And so again, 2 compliant areas I'm showing you, but very different outcomes. And certainly if you're walking alone, or if a member of your family is walking alone, I think you start to have more of a visceral reaction to some of these. And actually, if we look from a gender point of view, or maybe not your own self, we look at different breakdowns, and only 66% of women feel safe walking alone after dark, which is quite striking. And the women in the room won't find that striking at all. But that's the point of confronting some of these things. But men, 82%, so it's quite different. Whoops, one slide to me. So Hoa Yang and my team, she's led this question we've asked alongside Arup University and our research team, collaborating with Monash University's XYX Lab and Plan International, so a lot of people. Basically, user-centred data collection. So this is the Free2Be app. There's a data set collected around Melbourne. It was aimed at women and girls to drop a pin around the city and record their experience. And overwhelmingly, nighttime came to the top. So we found this really fascinating. And really, we're trying to understand, well, what makes this so? If everything's designed to the standards and it's fine, then why is this happening and how can we make it better? So understanding experiential journeys around safety or safe and unsafe, we've broken it down into these elements. Lighting's the only thing at the bottom. So we've got a load of work that we can be doing to understand who the users are at night time, what they're thinking and what they're doing, the spaces we're creating, the adjacencies, exits, the surface treatments. Reflectivity is a really basic lighting principle, but we don't adhere to that much in the urban realm. Infrastructure and elements, and then lighting. So many things which are very different to just lux levels. So what we've found from this research project, we ran around 84 sites around Melbourne, and we have an understanding of what makes a site feel safe or unsafe based on a load of different characteristics. Brighter does not equal safer. So layering and context is really important. So multiple light sources correspond to safer spaces. Quality, not quantity. So less about the lux levels and more about the colour rendering, which is how well you can render colour in someone's face, or you can do, I always say, a beard or a bush. It's really that simple. And then the contrast as well. So that's something that's not even measured in the standards, but it has a huge bearing on how we perceive space. And an overview of the standards currently where we're at is we're being pushed into a compliance approach, which is on the left-hand side around lux levels, but we're actually looking for a considered design approach. It's harder, yeah, because innovation is harder, but it's something to think about in terms of the research and the voices of the people that we may not be representing as well as we could be. When we finished this research, we put it into the digital sort of foray for our lighting team was putting it into this GIS map. This is just like blew my mind when I first saw it, because I was thinking, how do we get all this information correlated together, and what other things can we see from it? So this is moving through all the sites that we visited. It's got also overlays of other data. So the red dots are actually the Free2Be original data set. And what we've done here is triangulated distances to public transport and highlighted basic information from each site we've done, so users can really see quite quickly, and this becomes a base layer for more innovation. From this, we thought, well, how do we help the industry? We've come up with a process and a tool, a digital tool called the Nighttime Vulnerability Assessment, or NVA, and really it takes on these different layers to define and then cross-reference back to that averaged out baseline, I guess, of what makes a space safe or unsafe. And newsflash, it's not just light, right? So we all probably know that. It starts with listening. So I guess for us, we've been finding huge value in we went to Bunnings and bought 30 torches, and we go out and we do this as a consulting offering. But man, we hear some stuff and we hear some stories, and it's so influential in the way we approach our design. And no one ever goes, this doesn't meet the standards, because no one knows what the standards are, because they're just normal people. So it's quite this confronting thing, which we take on board this journey. What we did in terms of MRPV is that we built them a little website, which we shared with them so that they could check on what we're up to. And a key part of what we do is we go to site and we scan. So we almost take a nighttime Google Street View, if you will. But this information really helps us because we can use processing and high dynamic range photography to calibrate luminance. So luminance is the brightness and the contrast I was speaking about before. So it helps people understand what the heck we're on about. And I can show you through these slides here that all these journey parts are quite different. So this enabled us to have these conversations where we can get on a Teams call and say, no, it's actually that dark there, or it's actually that bright. So really powerful stuff, just in sort of basic form. When we go to site, we measure all sorts of different things. I can talk to them about them after this. but a lot of information gets uploaded to the cloud straight away. We're inputting this digital tool we've developed. We input everything on site on an iPad, and it automatically saves in it, which is really helpful. The cool thing about this is a video. The cool thing about this project is that it was developed with our risk and security team and our digital team. So what this is showing at the moment, and I'll skim over it as quick as I can for my ability to make the video go any faster. We've just used Auckland here as an example to show, I guess, no vulnerabilities in public to people, potentially. So what we do here with the tool, it's online based. We can plot the sites, customers, clients, whatever you like to call them, can pay by site if they want. And we can really define the scope quite easily. What you end up doing is you click onto each site, and then you can upload lux levels, various other things at the same time. We have a check-in, a login that sends messages to people to let you know that they're safe on site at the time, which is really important. The data's collected and processed within the tool, and I can't fast forward it because I don't have the laptop in front of me. Yeah, nice. So the example outcomes of the tool are this. So the tool's got a bit more information to go within it, but the really cool thing, the digestible thing for clients, normal people, is to get this quick summary. The lower the number compared to 100, the safer it is, or the more it aligns with the perception of safety. So I'm not saying that it's safe in that sense, but it's got characteristics that correlate to that safe outcome. There's a bit of a spider diagram with the site's information on it overlaid on top of the baseline data, and a nice little summary for clients to take away. This is a site traffic light system, nice and easy to have better conversations about where things need to happen given the size of the projects. And then we go back to the future, back into analog, I would call it, to deliver recommendations. So we discuss with clients, this is the context, these are the bits we'll add, these are the things you need to consider, these are some ways about going about it. So overall, it's a pretty powerful thing. I think this is the summary at the end. I won't go through all the bits and pieces because they're there on the screen. It's a PowerPoint no-no. But I just want to thank MRPV for the courage to actually have a go at looking at some of these things and how they can, or I guess how we can rise to that challenge that Scott mentioned. And hopefully we'd like to think that there'll be improvements going forward in the nighttime environment on their projects. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Scott and Tim, and a great call to the room to share knowledge and innovation, and that's what our event really is about today. The next case study is the iconic Sydney Opera House, one of Australia's best known landmarks. The Sydney Opera House case study will be introduced by Gordon Lau. Gordon is a materials engineer at Arup. The main presentation will then be given by Dean Jakbowski, Building Operations Manager from the Sydney Opera House. Dean has more than 20 years' experience in asset and project management at the Sydney Opera House. Welcome, Gordon.
Thanks, Serryn. That's what we're playing. So the Sydney Opera House is one of the most famous buildings in the world, and its history is inextricably linked with our own. For those of us joining globally and may not know, the Sydney Opera House was one of the first projects that brought Arup to Australia 60 years ago. We are very excited to talk about this project, especially given the timing of the celebrations of the 50th anniversary of the house and the Arup's 60 years in Australia. Digital solutions have always been at the heart of the Sydney Opera House since its design inception. The bold winning design had no engineering consultation upon submission and was considered by some as impossible to build. This is where the Hudson and Arup partnership was first forged. Through close collaboration between design and engineering teams, as many as 12 different versions of the gravity-defying curves were developed. The evolution of the original sketch to the reality of the iconic sails, as we know them now, required calculations at volume and complexity never before known. the creation of the precast shells required pioneering use of computers. Up until the Sydney Opera House, calculations for large-scale building projects were still manual. The use of computers pushed the limits of contemporary engineering technology and revolutionized engineering. Our continued work spans multiple projects over 52 years, providing technical services across 14 plus disciplines, including structural, geotechnical, fire, pedestrian planning, facade, and remedial services, to name a few. Our partnership also extends outside of project work through the ongoing MADE program and Sydney Build partnership. Upon the completion of the decade of renewal, we look to the future role of the Sydney Opera House. Today, we're going to dive into a few examples of how we continue to use digital and data as we look to the future of the house and help maintain its extended 250-year design life, not just as an asset, but as a cultural precinct. From the house, I have here with me Dean Jakbowski, the building operations manager, who I've had the pleasure to work with for the past couple of years across numerous facade and structural maintenance and remedial works. A few of the photos you're seeing in the back is of myself and the team, abseiling off the roofs for one of our inspections. In that shot, that's Dean in the middle and myself to the right, as we're inspecting the tiles. So our remedial and diagnostics team has helped them to inspect and maintain the fabric of the house, as well as to develop digital tools along the way, such as Arup Inspect 3D, or AI 3D for short, which Dean will talk about more. Our digital team spans across the region, including Raymond Chow and Sean Witt's team from Malaysia, and Thomas Meng from Queensland, Australia, have been instrumental in its development, just to name a few. The house embraces digital technology and modern methods in the way it manages the building. And Dean has been a key partner, being an early adopter of Arup's digital tools and supporting their development to become what it is today. And with that, I welcome Dean to give his reflection on the house and our digital tools.
Thanks, Gordon, and thanks for having me, Arup. My name's Dean Jakbowski. I'm the Building Operations Manager at the Sydney Opera House. I've been at the house now since 2006. I started off as a building fabric manager as a contractor and had the opportunity to move in-house about 9 years ago. So great opportunity, great building to work for. So most people know the Sydney Opera House. As soon as you see the iconic sails, the shape of it, everyone around the world generally knows where you are within the world. It's a world-renowned building, a World Heritage listed building operating for just over 50 years now. On top of it, its busy tourist attraction, it attracts around 11 million people to the site every single year. We host around 2,000 shows in any given year across our 6 indoor stages, our forecourt and broad walks, and also host around about another 300 shows based around kids as well. There's a vast assortment of shows that we hold at the Opera House. When the building was first opened, everyone knew the building as just opera and ballet and symphony. We hold a vast array of art forms, cabaret, burlesque, circus, dance, live concerts, you name it, we do it. You can see a beautiful image there. We also use the building as a bit of a canvas for artistic expression as well, whether it's global mourning, whether it's global celebration. Just recently, we celebrated the start of our 50th anniversary, and you can see over Arup projected on the sails, which was an amazing opportunity for us to show the construction actually on the side of the building, which was beautiful. It's our building operations team that manage nearly every operational aspect of the Sydney Opera House, everything from lighting, security, vehicle and pedestrian traffic, event and restaurant logistics, engineering, maintenance and repairs and so forth. Some of the biggest challenges of operating the building is the demand on the building. The building operates 365 days a year, so essentially we have one shutdown day, which is Good Friday, and even then the operation team are bringing down all of our UPS power to make sure that if we do have a power failure, it still works. Beyond hosting the assortment of shows and events, is to maintain the house well into the future in the ever-changing world and climate. A detailed inspection and maintenance regime has been implemented across the house to ensure public safety, continued operational life of the building is upkept, All major elements of the building and building fabric are regularly inspected and remediated as the building ages and various components deteriorate and wear. Some of the major areas that have been working with Arup since 2006 where we've been inspecting are the large glass walls and bronze louvers, the concrete roof, the roof tiles and shells, the precast panels that surround the building, the seawall panels, the broadwalk structure, the basement structure, and just most recently the internal steelwork. The traditional methods and tools have evolved with technology and digital enhancement. Arup have developed their 3D app along the way to transfer traditional pen and paper photograph data collection on site into a 3D database interface and on a tablet. I'm just about to showcase the AI 3D app from our roof tile shell inspection, which was completed just last year. This inspection involves the inspection of 1,556,006 tiles, including all the tile sealants. It takes around a team about 6 weeks to complete, depending on how good Sydney's weather is at the time. And yeah, around 6 abseilers to be able to actually complete this task. It's a massive task. We only do it every 5 years, which is great, but you can see when we start to navigate through this building. What you'll see there, it looks like the Opera House has got dots all over it, but it's about 1,500 data points. As you can see, we can visualize and navigate in 3D, an accurate 3D model, being able to peel away layers of the building, which makes it easy for you to understand and locate points for all parties, particularly with the complex shape and structure that the Opera House is known for. On paper, it can be a really struggle to get your head around in 2D, but in 3D, when you look at it, it makes it easier to navigate and see what's going on. The database also has a great search functionality, which enables me to quickly select on items of interest for us to act on, prioritise, without losing detail or feeling overwhelmed. As such, the resealing of the sealant joints and tile lids or replacing even loose tiles, which we're going to hone in on in a sec. Each of these 1,500 data points is detailed with photos, recommended action, and time-stamped, which we can follow up or act upon straight away, or we can just leave it till the next inspection. Or we can close it out if we will. You can see there's a chip tile. I will note there was only 35 tiles at the last inspection, which out of 1 million tiles is pretty good. Further to closing out any action items, the collection of data is analysed and kept for future reference to look at trends and forecast future maintenance records. The traffic light system that you see was requested by myself to make it really easier to know what I need to action. If you see anything that's red, it shouldn't be red because that's a safety issue and we'd address it straight away. But essentially orange we need to act upon, blue is something that we want to make note of, then we can go back in future and look at that. In my opinion, the overall value we get from this system is greater understanding and informed decision making to best address issues at hand and for the future of the house. So you can see us navigating. So at the moment, that's just showing our tiles. We can turn it off and look at precast panels. We can look at the internal structure. We can look at the broadwalks. We can basically search all around the building, so all of those elements. Even things like little chips in glass, we can have a record for, and then go back and either decide to replace that or ignore it. So that's the AI 3D map. The next digital enhancement I'd like to talk from, or the digital platform, is mass motion. What you can see there is a regular event. So we put on large music concerts on the forecourt, which is generally attended around about 7,000 people. The person you see performing there is Paul Kelly, but we have everyone from, we've had Oprah have a stage out there, 5 Seconds of Summer, Crowded House, the German band Kraftwerk, you name it, we get them on that forecourt. At the Opera House, we really strive to use every part of the building. Real estate's a real prime. And we can't really have any downtime, so making use of the venue is really important to us. So keeping in mind we host around about 2,000 events like this and 11 million visitors are coming annually, it's the busiest cultural arts institution in Australia, if not one in the busiest cultural arts institute in the world. We support events throughout the year across our 6 major halls, 2 event rooms, 3 restaurants, a massive forecourt that you see there, and 3 different public-facing promenades. We recently engaged Arup to study the evacuation performance of 3 scenarios: a concert on the forecourt, a concert on the Northern Broadwalk, and New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve, if everyone knows, it's around about 17,000 people that come down to site. It's like one of the biggest events that we have at the house. Each scenario held a combination of event attendance, management overlay, evacuation parameters, creating a complex set of factors that is difficult to appreciate in traditional planning process. We basically really wanted to understand the confluence of egress flows as part of the site and manage evacuation. Arup modelled each of these scenarios in mass motion dynamic pedestrian simulation software. So mass motion is a tool, it was actually developed around 20 years ago. So the image you're seeing there is in the concert hall, about 2,700 people. And I also understand Arup's actually used it in stadiums, airports, and lots of other venues around the world. The event you're about to see now, so we're going to show a live snapshot, is 6,000 people congregated on the monumental steps and a large stage nestled on the forecourt. A lot like the 3D map, you can see around 6,000 people nestled on the forecourt and between about 7,100 people in various rooms of the Opera House. There was also around 2,370 people on the lower forecourt. So in this situation, we've got about 16,000 people on site. Our primary concern with this scenario is the barriers. So as you can imagine, when you're putting on an event, you've got barriers separating each of the venues. So what we wanted to do is the large stage itself is being able to get people off site safely. So what you can see there is the people, we call them agents. They're coloured based on their origin of destination. So the pink agents are those attending the large event on the forecourt and and on the lower concourse. You'll also see some of the pink agents. They'll turn blue as they head to Macquarie Street rather than Circular Quay. The green agents are originating from actually inside the Opera House itself. So as you can imagine, we want to really know where the people are coming from and where they're going. Mixed within the agents, we've also got restricted mobility people, so people that may not move at the same pace of everybody else. So what we want to do is really get a full spectrum of everybody that's at the house. You'll also see the green agents arriving behind the scene of the pink agents. This is because the time it takes for to exit from numerous rooms in the Sydney Opera House and out onto the precinct. Some of those agents exit towards Royal Botanical Gardens. So that circular area you can see there, that's off towards the Royal Botanical Gardens. In these tests, several indicators gave us to help us understand the performance of the space, the experience, and the people egress, and namely in terms of time, density, and delay. If during these tests we found that we weren't meeting any of the desired outcomes, the levers we may need to improve is manage flows to a different area, open and close crowd control barriers to control flow, relieve congestion, change population of a particular space, or reduce demand, so reduce the numbers of people visiting those particular areas. In addition to these performance metrics, the levers also improved performance gave us simulations to engage a platform across the Sydney Opera House department. So we can sit down with stakeholders, event managers, security, operational staff like myself, and management to best plan for upcoming events. The study also established a benchmark for crowd management and operations that could be used for conversations for external stakeholders, promoters, hirers, deployed for event staff training, and as a framework for managing similar events across the precinct. It really helps us understand and plan for the years ahead. So for these two apps, where I see them going in the future is I'd love to be able to team this up with the City of Sydney, also the Royal Botanical Gardens, and basically look at, say, a major event like, say, New Year's Eve, for example, where we've got 1.5 billion people coming down to the precinct, and being look at, how we can actually control that flow, not just on our site, but also other sites. And things like with the 3D app is we're looking at sort of drone technology to be able to fly over and look at sort of waterproofing issues, doing things like robotic inspections to supplement our physical inspections and uploading that directly into the database as well. So yeah, thanks for having us, and thanks, Arup, for the partnership over the last 50 years.
Amazing. Thank you, Dean and Gordon. And I hope you're getting a sense of just how flexible digital is. Now we're going to move to another project which it shows scale. So this project is known as Asset Trust. It's an example of a citywide tool that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to interpret images for the benefit of improved efficiency in operations and community safety. To present Asset Trust, I'll invite Mian. He is the Assets and Operations Advisory Lead for Arup across Australasia. Thank you, Daniyal.
Thank you very much, Serryn, for the opportunity to present Asset Trust and welcome all. Asset Trust, in true Arup fashion, one Arup fashion, is an integrated service of technology, artificial intelligence, subject matter expertise in asset management, a whole of life cycle approach, and the ability to identify defects and prioritize defects and connect that data to the enterprise asset management system. So it's been about 3 years that I was approached by a client, from Citi's client, the chief technology officer. They said to me, Arup is known for innovation. We have got some complaints coming from politicians. A lot of the ratepayers are complaining about defects not being fixed. So, Mr. Arup, what can you do for us? And on top of that, there were some safety incidents happening as well, which was leading into liability issues. The client wanted a consistent approach towards defect assessment. And so that was the start of introducing Asset Trust. And it's been 3 years, and I've spoken to about 200 more clients, and they're saying the same things, the same issues. So there is a huge opportunity that led to the investment in Asset Trust. So what is Asset Trust? It uses AI and computer vision to identify defects across road assets, signage, and street furniture, and any type of civil assets. It uses context engine and predictive AI to prioritize these defects. It can then help our clients to connect the data to enterprise asset management systems and work order systems, and on top all of that while working within the privacy and the regulation of our clients. I'll just start a video which will have a voiceover from Tate, who was involved in the development of Asset Trust. Chris couldn't make it here, but he's going to run us through how Asset Trust operates.
Our initial process focuses on data capture, which, for Asset Trust, we perform with a series of key partners in the industry. Data is captured by vehicle-mounted devices using a computer vision AI model to automatically identify defects and store them. It can be mounted in any vehicle and can make use of standard commercially available recording hardware-owned mounts. The data is loaded into a predefined schema and dynamically uploaded via cellular or Wi-Fi to a secure cloud environment ready for the Asset Trust platform to ingest and process the data. The system has the capability to capture and process an increasing number of different asset and defect types, and is being further expanded to include items of interest in other infrastructure applications.
Just keep moving to the next one. This is another video.
In developing our Asset Trust cloud platform, we understood that efficient visualization and sorting of information gathered through the capture process was critical to its overall success. To drastically reduce the time between capture and analysis, we automate the type, severity, and priority as defined by the client's requirements. Here we see that information easily selected, filtered and sorted by various methods. With each data point captured, we have the ability to quickly interrogate the data to either verify the defect through a manual visual check, or in rare cases, use this information to add to a list of defects to be inspected by a person via traditional means. Where used as a standalone tool, data in Asset Trust can be easily analyzed and exported by asset managers for use in reporting or generating work orders. Where Asset Trust is deployed to an integrated client environment, our API will serve the data directly to the client enterprise asset management systems for automated work order generation or financial planning.
So the client that I mentioned, the Chief Technology Officer, these are some of the benefits that we have realized for them. 30% reduction in community calls from the community, 15% more defects fixed, twice as many defects captured in quarter of a time, and Asset Trust, from the time the data is captured to the time that work orders are generated, it just takes 30 minutes, and it's a fully automated system. On top of it, the client came back to us again and said, another request, Mr. Arup. So what we want is that the outcome is aligned to our SDG drivers. So we've been able to install the data collection technology on garbage trucks. So where the garbage truck does its usual weekly run, they can collect the defects data rather than sending out specific maintenance cars for collecting the data. We are in the process of extending this and scaling this into the rail environment. And also currently there's been a lot of research that has gone through into our market competition, the available products. So we are looking at scaling this across Arup in UK as well as the Americas as well. I would like to use this opportunity to do a call out for a few people who have been involved with the development. So Lachlan Williams, who's based in the asset management team in Brisbane, Johnny Renton, if you can just stand up just quickly, and Ben Stewart and Jen Kemp, and obviously Chris Tate. Thank you very much. And I would suggest that if you are interested to talk about it, happy to talk about it, I would suggest we start with a pilot approach, low-hanging fruit. So happy to support you on that. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Daniyal. And in our discussions, I've been just amazed at the flexibility and the potential of the tool to work across other infrastructure. So we've demonstrated on roads, but also rail and city buildings, and yeah, it's really up to our imagination how far we can take that. So now we've had our presentations, and I'd like to thank all our presenters, and we'll move into a panel discussion. I know there must be a lot of questions coming in online and both in the room. We will have a roving microphone in the room. If you could please use the microphone so that people online can hear questions. And I'll invite our panellists now to the chairs at the front. So we've got Scott, Dean and Daniyal. Okay, so I'm going to take the liberty of asking the first question, and while the room is getting ready with theirs, Scott, I'd just like to talk about innovation. So you presented us with a challenge around innovation. Where do you see that we could have the biggest impact?
So I think my view is that as an industry, it's our partners, being designers and contractors, that actually come up with the innovation. From a government perspective, we're not going to come up with all the innovation ourselves. As we just don't have the resource or the people or the knowledge or the skills. And so, the reason I put that out to a lot of the presentations I give is to sort of signal to the industry to say, we want you to come to us. What are the innovations you've got, and how can we help pave the way, from our perspective in government, to break down barriers, or allow new technology, allow new materials, or digital information. I guess one of the biggest challenges is that innovation feasible? It's always there's a level of having to filter the ideas that are coming in. And again, I think we can help put that lens on with our industry partners to do that. So I think your question was what can you innovate in? From my perspective, everything, materials, technology, processes, everything possible. I don't know, we're doing the lighting after dark was just one piece we're doing with Arup, but there are a few other initiatives we've got underway, which are quite diverse in a whole range of different areas.
Excellent, thank you. So Dean, on an infrastructure such as iconic as the Sydney Opera House, how do you think we can help to take you to the next level?
Yeah, I think the next step for us is really building on what we've got. I mean, the building was, one of the most innovative buildings that was created back in the day. So, look, I'd really like to see, things like AI. I'd really like to see things like robot technology. I think there's always going to be a need to do physical inspections. I think there's, the human eye is really, really great, but also supplementing that with things like, robotic tile tap testing, things that can take, the safety element out of it. As I was mentioning before about that mass motion, I think expanding that as a citywide event. I mean, with 1.5 million people sort of just surrounding around the Sydney Harbour, if something was to happen, being able to be prepared for that and working with, our neighbours and government to be able to be well prepared for that, I think is probably our next step.
Great. So really moving that into real time.
Yeah, well. I think so, yeah.
Great. So key quarter, Daniyal, how do we help you to move through your journey from design to operations and into the future?
I think in terms of moving from design to operations, it's all around, I guess, the outcomes that the recipients of the technology will have to live with. So it's around the technology is one thing, but it's also making sure that we've got very sound procedures for the recipients to follow. I think that's been certainly an element in a smart building like Quay Quarter to really try and drive home. In terms of the innovation side of things, I think we've certainly done a great job with Arup around laying the foundational infrastructure, getting all the data into the one sort of common place. But what are those industry trends or emerging technologies that can best fit as an overlay to what we've put in the building? So I think, like the role of AI, I think there is a really great role in how we can sort of use that type of tool set to drive ESG outcomes. So yeah, I just think the sky's the limit. It's around what our tenant partners, the building community want as well, that will also feed back into how we best optimise the building.
Yeah, great. And prior to today's event, we were discussing procurement and digital services, and you had some ideas around that.
Yeah, I think in terms of the technology sophistication now going into buildings, I think the industry as a whole needs to look at how that's being procured. It's traditionally packaged up by each of the disciplines, whether it be mechanical services or security underneath, obviously mech and electrical. But maybe there's a role of having a common technology sort of provider or a platform or a package that does all the coordination directly with the builder, that has really defined sort of roles and responsibilities which each of the sub-system providers or the services. So I think having that sort of enterprise or that overlay piece could really alleviate or remove some of the the contentious scope gaps with having the one sort of common sort of technology package.
Yeah, great. And Scott, you also had some comments around procurement and MRPV. I'm wondering if you were able to share some of your thoughts on that.
In relation to digital procurement. So as one of the initiatives we've got going on in government at the moment is we've got a plan to roll out digital engineering through to 2027, which is a big piece of work across multiple departments, using a whole lot of industry partners to achieve that. And one of the challenges we've got is around procurement and how I think, in the environment we work in the transport sector, is that a digital model potentially gets passed from multiple, whether you call it owners or users, and then how you allow a contractual basis to allow that to pass through so that ownership is retained and, people aren't having to reinterrogate, information again and again and again. It's a challenge. I don't have the answer. If anyone was hoping to get the answer from me, I don't. That's part of what the work we're doing. Like to hear, from AMP in Sydney Opera House, how you're managing that, because you would own digital models and then you would pass it to, a provider or an industry partner, and they would modify it and give it back to you, and then you give it to someone else, and that is a challenge around the ownership of that. So I don't know if I have any answers for you, but it's definitely something we're working on, and maybe I'll come back in 2027 with an answer.
Yeah, I do really hope that with the state-based digital twins that there will be a platform for a number of these projects to be that custodian. Dean, did you have any thoughts from the Sydney Opera House?
I think one of the challenges we face is being able to get contractors and builders to be able to operate in our model as well. So it's well when you go into procure a major project, but also what you're asking back, how much time does it take? What is that value on top of the project? Are you going to get value when it actually comes back to you? And also how many models are operating for the one precinct? I know we've got a couple of digital models at the moment where we've got our BIM, but, and we're using the AI 3D Opera House model as well. So just making sure that the information you're getting back you are going to use, and you're not just getting it back for the sake of it, I think is super important. And also when you do get that information back, being able to use it in a user-friendly way so that you can actually, you don't have to be a genius to be able to navigate and use the actual data that's coming back in.
Great. So did we have any questions from the floor? Yes, Sean.
Hi, I'm Sean. So I work here in Melbourne as leading the digital team, so I work very closely with Serryn. I've got questions for all of you actually, but I'm going to pick on Daniyal, just because. So first of all, Nicola mentioned it almost in passing that in terms of asset repurposing, retaining 2/3 of the original structure, that's a phenomenal outcome in its own right. So well done for that. So that's a shout out I wanted to make. That's not my question. Clearly, an awful lot of thought has gone into the design and the delivery of the project. And since that point, post-occupation, you've been collecting a lot of data. So what are you learning in terms of how the building is responding to its external environments and the occupants inside? And probably even more so, what you're learning about how people are interfacing with the building itself in terms of the user experience. And is it meeting expectations or even exceeding them?
It's an evolving learning journey at the moment. We've actually got a number of tenants still moving into a building that was actually reached practical completion almost a year ago. So certainly we're learning how the building actually operates. We're looking at how we can stabilise a lot of obviously the systems that come out of the construction process. From a user experience perspective, I think certainly from the tenants that have moved in so far, it's we've been able to really understand, I guess, some of the learnings from when we first opened to where we are now. So certainly the data is painting a very good picture around how we should be looking to optimise experiences for future tenants, and certainly some of the evolving needs. So even when we do like our fit out work with the tenants, like how do we make sure that we successfully integrate their systems within base building and just provide that really holistic sort of a street to desk experience. Even from just like the general public that interact with the building as well. I think that's been something that we've really tried to learn. Like, we've obviously got the tower itself, which is a flagship of the precinct, but how do we make sure that we're getting the throughput through to the Key Quarter lanes, which is the residential sort of precinct and the retail precinct, and cross-promote sort of deals, and just really try and liven up the precinct as well. So it's only something that we've been able to really understand through, I guess, the operation of the precinct as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Did you say that you had a question for each of the panellists?
I can keep going.
Yeah.
Dean, question for you. So, I've been involved in Arup Inspect 3D from several years ago, and in fact, when we designed and built this building that we're occupying now, one of my questions to Lendlease and their operations people was why are we still designing facade systems that require people to be climbing outside and risking life and limb and everything else? So, I guess the question to you is, how far do you think we are away from fully roboticized inspection regimes?
Yeah, I think
is that something you would trust?
It's something we trialled, actually. We worked with the University of Sydney to be able to trial a digital hammer that could actually test drumminess behind the tile. I think that there's still some old school thought process that the human ear is better than that at the moment. When you've got a million tiles sitting over the public's head, you really want to be sure that they're adhered to. And I think technology is getting there. We're still working at it. I think that, building a system that can navigate the complex structure of the Opera House is going to be super difficult. I think maybe drone technology might be the next step, where we can actually do, really, really good digital photos to be able to actually examine and overlay those photos and look at any changes in the building and things like that. But yeah, I think probably it's still a few years away. I think that we've probably got another couple of 5-year tile tap tests with Gordon up our sleeve before we move down to that path. But yeah, we certainly would love to supplement that inspection with something that is a bit more technical and digital, where we can, get people off ropes and, send a robot up the side of the building. Even though we just filmed a film that actually did something similar like that at the Opera House, but it wasn't real. So yeah.
Great. So we've had a question come in online for Scott and Tim. Do either of you have feedback on how to make space for innovation and research when projects are bound by strict design and construction timelines, and designers, contractors prioritise billable hours over innovation?
So I've got a very, very clear response to that, is that what we're trying to do is take innovation out of projects. I did sort of say that innovation is created in projects, and definitely in my industry, the projects are what drives innovation. But totally agree, whoever wrote that is one of the biggest issues, I think, again, in the transport sector, is timeframe and budgets within a project are very, very difficult to push quite progressive ideas. And this work we're doing with Tim is actually taken outside of a project. Yes, we did have projects that we trialled it on, and it's more than trialled, we used it on, but it wasn't driven by the project as such. And that's definitely what we're trying to do with a lot of the work we're doing. Look for opportunities early. Look for the standards and specifications work that I spoke about. All that's outside of projects, and we're working with our industry partners to try and do that. Outside of it. So I feel the pain of whoever that person was that mentioned that, and that I've been a designer in the past, and you come up with these great ideas, but you're hit with barriers because of the budget, because of the time frame. You can't get the approvals. I would encourage you to take those ideas outside of projects.
Great. Okay. Are there any other questions from the room? Amir?
Hello, I'm Amir, Data and Digital Lead at Mian Consulting Group. Thank you for fantastic presentation and brilliant ideas. That was a relief to know that we are still around, even though platforms like ChatGPT is coming. But yeah, we found the sweet spot that we are needed. Thank you. My question about data modeling and machine learning is about the validation. One of the hairy bits of a machine learning model, in my experience, is the validation. I'm keen to know from the panels, how do you put validation as part of the process, as part of the before the end of the process, and how do you pitch that to the senior manager to convince them that the model is not good enough to go out and from different clients, for instance, some clients are happy with 70%, some others are not happy with 90% accuracy. How do you handle that, and what do you suggest for a process to be put in place?
Great, thank you, Amir. I wonder from the AMP perspective, Daniyal, because you're developing personas for clients within the building, if you have any thoughts on validation and accuracy?
I do. I think like coming out of the construction phase, I mean, we certainly have made sure that we adopt a consistent sort of point tagging or asset classification standard, and that's something that we've enforced throughout the construction process. I think in terms of the data validation, absolutely 100% that we need to get that right before we do any sort of overlays around smarts or machine learning. So we're at the point where we're doing a lot of retro commissioning of systems, making sure that a lot of that data is valid. And I think the complexities with, say, with a base building, and then you've got the tenancy fit out. So tenancies might do something slightly differently. So we're just making sure that part of the whole sort of stabilisation of the asset, that all the data is clearly being commissioned correctly by our contractors. And we're using tools like fault detection to help sort of enable that. From an end user or persona perspective, certainly it's around, I think, some of the rolled up views around sort of neighbours' performance. That gives a very high level view if the building is performing as expected, even from a centralised alarm management. I think that sort of provides a pretty good overlay on like how the building is sort of stabilising or serving the community. Yeah.
Great. And Dean, have you run into this with the Opera House?
Not so much as, I mean, we've got a really, really intelligent BMCS system that we've launched at the Sydney Opera House, and a lot of the validation is still physically checking what the data is. So, you know, someone go and actually make sure that the data that we're getting in is actually accurate. So, yeah, it's probably nice, yeah.
Okay. And Scott, did you have any thoughts around?
I might take it back a little bit, that I reckon one of the biggest challenges is the volume of data. Like, what do you do with all that data when you've got digital information? Because it's so easy to collect a whole lot of stuff, and then you have to think, well, what am I going to do with all this? What am I going to tell, you know, from your perspective, what are you going to tell your client you're going to do with all this sort of stuff? I think in the short term, probably, you know, we're all safe in our jobs, that we're going to need, you know, people like you to sort through all that data and make sense of it and validate it. You know, I think that's going to be a really important role. What the future holds, not sure. Again, I've got to come back in 2027, so maybe I can share that with you then. But, you know, I think that is a real challenge. You know, that there's the you know, the want to collect data as much as you can, but then what do you do with it? You know, and you have to make sure you've got a use for it. You've got to make sure it's useful, it's accurate, you know, it's validated.
Wonderful, thank you. Are there any other last questions from the floor? You're all silent online? Well, I'll just ask our panellists to maybe give us just 1 minute sort of summary of where you think our biggest challenges are that you're facing that we can help you to overcome, perhaps in the next, you know, 1 to 2 years sort of time horizon.
Yeah, I think it's around, from a building perspective, it's like mixing the data that we've got in our built environment with asset register data, and then also contextualising it with work order or like financial data sets. I think that is a real sort of area of opportunity that we can start to unpack there.
Wonderful.
I think for us, we're at a stage where we'd like to actually automate a lot of the requests that come through. We have a range of different clients that come on site that have a range of different requests, such as, you know, humidity requests and temperature requests from ballet and opera. We'd like to see some sort of automation so we can actually, you know, those requests that come through, we can take sort of the human element out of that and actually program it. So even though it happens through the BMCS, if that doesn't work out, we can actually, you know, go back and it does it automatically so that we don't have to actually interfere and have a help desk call up and do that type of thing. So I think that will be our next step.
Great.
I think from government's perspective, we're on this journey around digital data and information. And if I look across our industry and look at the different sectors being sort of designers, contractors and government at one end, is that I don't see Arup and the designer cohort as the people we need to convince or educate or make literate in digital technology. I think you're there. So the good news is you're all good. What I'd probably say to you and what support we need is probably right at the other end. Our asset owners in the government space is helping them with digital literacy is probably one of the biggest challenges we've got. How do you educate and help people who have used pen and paper for their whole career move to a digital model and digital information and data. So that's sort of the challenge. I'll leave with you.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, we're getting the cue to wrap up, so I'd like to really take this opportunity to thank you as the panellists and our clients for coming in to share your experiences today. And I'd also like to thank our organisers who have managed to put today's event together. You've done an amazing job, and we promise that we will finish on time and on budget and everything we have to do. So thank you very much. I invite you to stand and give a round of applause to our panellists today.